Joining me now is the preeminent Flyers beat reporter from PHLY, Charlie O'Connor. Charlie, thank you for making the time.
Yeah, I'm very busy, but never too busy for you, Pat.
I like that. All right. Let's start out with the big move. Yesterday, Flyers acquiring Trevor Zegras. Now, I said they stole him, but you've forgotten more hockey than I know. So what was your take on the move?
Well, I don't know if I would use stole, but it's a good deal for the Flyers. And I think the best part about this deal for the Flyers isn't even necessarily the player. And Trevor Zegras very well may rebound and turn back into the guy he was his first 2 seasons in the NHL when he looked like a future star. And then the Flyers look like geniuses. But it's also important for what it says about Danny Briere, because the Flyers had been talking off and on with Anaheim about Trevor Zegras for over a year. This is not new. It's just that in the past, Anaheim was asking for a lot more. They were asking for first round picks. They were asking for roster players. I wouldn't quite say they were asking for the moon, but they were asking for a guy who they believe warranted a really big package back, which makes sense. I mean, as Briere said, top six centers, guys with high upside, they don't get traded very often, especially when they're only 24, 23 years old. I guess he would have been last year when they started the conversation. Danny Briere said, I'm not willing to pay that price. That's not a price I'm willing to pay. And he could have, it could have blown up in his face. They could have found somebody else who was willing to pay that price, and then they missed the opportunity to get a potential top six center to address their center problem. Instead, Briere basically played chicken with Anaheim, and eventually Anaheim caved. Anaheim was willing to trade Zegras to the Flyers for a price that Danny Briere felt was fair, if not extremely favorable to the Flyers. Because second round pick's not useless. You can get a good player in the second round, but it's highly unlikely the guy taken with that pick is going to be anywhere near as good as Trevor Zegras is right now. Very, very small chance. Ryan Poehling, good player. You could be on my team any day, but he's a bottom six center. That's what Briere said. That's what I believe. He's probably a fourth line center on a cup contender. And then a fourth round pick in 2026, I don't know. It's a piece of gum. It's whatever. So they didn't give up any prime assets. They didn't give it a first round pick. They didn't give up one of their top prospects. They didn't give up a roster player. I give Danny Briere a lot of credit for sticking to his guns and not caving, because there were multiple times during this negotiation where he could have caved and he didn't. And he ultimately was rewarded by getting Zegras at a very, very reasonable price.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's amazing to think about where this organization's gone from. You had just a couple of years ago, the GM talking about, well, other teams are willing to give up a first round pick for Rasmus Ristolainen, so we had to. And then you've got Danny Briere, who had 3 first round picks and didn't have to give up any of them for this guy. That's one of the reasons why I said I think they stole him, is the fact that they were able to keep all 3 first round picks. But why do you think the return was so low? I mean, there's another side to this, obviously, and Trevor Zegras is a 24-year-old center. It just seems too good to be true. So what, in your opinion, is the fact that Pat Verbeek decided, all right, let's just move on from the kid?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. Number one, and this is legitimate, is roster fit. I think they looked at it as they have Leo Carlsson, who was a top 5 pick a few years back. He's their 1C. They're locked in with him as their 1C for the future. Then they have Mason McTavish, who they believe is their 2C for the long term. They looked at Zegras and they're like, all right, if he sticks down the middle, he's probably our third line center. So then they tried moving him to wing the last couple of years. And they came to the determination that they didn't think his skill set was well served on the wing. So the way they were looking at it was, if he's the 3C, he's not that valuable to us. So we're going to trade him, which I think is a reasonable way to look at it. I think it's totally reasonable for Anaheim to be like, we need to trade from a position of strength. We have too many centers. That doesn't justify the low return. And I think you can explain the low return by the fact that Zegras' stock has fallen in the NHL. It's fallen among front offices. He's a smallish forward. He's got a reputation among certain general managers, certain teams, as being a bit soft. I think there is a feeling in league circles, I've heard this from multiple people, that he has a bit of an ego problem, that he's a little bit of a prima donna. Now, I don't necessarily buy that. I wonder if a little bit of it is jealousy over the fact that he got so hyped up so young. that maybe people around the league are like, and what did this kid do to deserve to be on the cover of NHL? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that might be a lot of it, but I can tell you that is a perception. That is a real perception. And I think there were quite a few teams that didn't even get involved in the bidding because they just didn't want to be bothered with the Trevor Zegras circus as they might have looked at it. So that cut down on the number of teams involved. And I also think Danny Briere had just been talking to them for a long time about them. So probably when they made the ultimate decision, we're going to make this move, they were looking more closely at the Flyers. Ryan Poehling, I don't think is a game changer. I do think, though, he's a very fast player, and I could easily see Joel Quenneville, who likes his teams, he's the new coach in Anaheim, likes his teams to play fast, might have said, hey, get me that guy. Get me Ryan Poehling because he can play my style. Plug him in as the 3C, and we're golden. He'll be real good under my system. And maybe Verbeek, who clearly was not a big fan of Zegras anyway, doesn't really fit the style that Pat Verbeek played, the little ball of hate that he was when he was a player. I think Verbeek was already negatively predisposed to Zegras, and combine that with the fact that there probably weren't a whole ton of teams involved in the bidding and the fact that they have probably too many centers, I think it kind of was just a perfect storm. And Danny Briere was just in the good position to swoop in and take advantage.
So what you're saying is that Ryan Poehling was David Putney.
David Putney, indeed.
Yeah, I said I need David Putney.
He was the kick returner. The kick returner. Give me that kick returner.
I knew you'd get it. All right. Looking at the beginning of the offseason, they fire Torts at the very end. I found the firing a little weird at the time, but he made those comments, and it just seemed like it was going to end eventually. Why not, go our separate ways now? They shocked the world, Charlie. They shocked everybody, and they brought in Rick Tocchet.
Nobody saw that coming.
No one saw it coming. By God, King, is that Tocchett's music? It was. Obviously they haven't played a game yet, but he's had his press conference. His style. How do you think he ideally fits? Other than the fact that he's a former Flyer, we all know that the Flyers organization loves the Flyer way. How do you think he fits with the current roster?
Well, I guess we'll find out. I think a lot of it comes down to how adaptable he can be. In his past jobs, he's tended to coach more of a dump and chase style. I think he will have to adapt a little bit here if he wants it to work here. He has guys like Owen Tippett, Matvei Michkov, who I think would benefit from a little bit more of a freewheeling rush-based style. So I think he's going to have to adapt. We'll see if he can. I think the real reason, number one, they wanted Rick Tocchet because they know him. They know that they can work with him. Jonesy's good buddies with him. Danny's friends with him. Like, they know that the group will function better with Tocchet in the Torts role versus Torts, because Torts was, as Danny Briere said after he fired him, he's a complicated guy. He's a very, very difficult guy to work with, whether you're a player, whether you're a GM, whether you're a scout, whatever. Like, when you say someone is a complicated guy, it's basically the equivalent of like after a breakup and it's like, well, what happened? Well, it's complicated. Like, oh, so you were miserable. So that was why. And that was pretty much why I think that Briere ultimately made the move, is I think he was just tired of dealing with the John Tortorella experience. The way they look at Tocchet, I think, is Tocchet can bring the things they liked about Torts, which is the discipline, which is the ability to coach a system and have the ability to implement it and have players listen to him without being so much of a dick about it, honestly, and being easier to work within the room, not blowing up at Cam York in between periods and starting to fight with them. Like, they want the good parts of Torts, the parts they like, the fact that he could be like, hey, this guy don't got that dog in him, get it out of here. They like that about Torts. And I think they think Tocchet can do the same, where he can say, yeah, this guy, you don't win with him the playoffs, trade him for a draft pick, get rid of him. But they just want it in a package that isn't so difficult. And I think Tocchet can be that. I think he is a coach with a good reputation as a player's coach. Now, there are some guys he's clashed with, Elias Pettersson being one. But then you have guys like Quinn Hughes, who is a skilled player who swears by him. Phil Kessel swears by Rick Tocchet. So he can work with skilled players as long as they have the intensity, as long as they have the drive. And I think the Flyers like that. They like the fact that Tocchet is the kind of guy where, if you are a bit casual, he's going to ride you. They think that's a good thing out of a coach. They just wanted that in a package that wasn't constantly making life miserable for everyone.
Yeah, I always liked Torts. I liked him as a coach, but he was a guy that he seemed to stymie some players' development. I remember in New York, like Matt Zuccarello was not Matt Zuccarello. In fact, he went back to the KHL because he couldn't fit Torts' style. So after watching Torts and now you know what Tochet's going to bring to the table. What player on the Flyers do you think is going to benefit most from this coaching change?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, that's all I ask.
Yeah, it's funny. The one guy who I think could actually benefit a lot, and it's not a young guy. I think Sean Couturier could benefit a lot because Sean Couturier and John Tortorella, for whatever reason, they did not mesh. Tortorella from day one, basically, because the first year Torts was head coach, he didn't really get to coach Couturier because he was recovering from the injury, missed the entire first year. But it just seemed like for whatever reason, Couturier rubbed him the wrong way. And then he scratches him, obviously, names him captain, then scratches him a month later. Couturier, in the wake of the firing, basically is like, yeah, we really didn't have much of a relationship. Like, this is your captain, and your coach isn't talking to your captain. I also think that Torts didn't like the way Couturier plays, especially now in his like hobbled, hampered form after the back surgeries. He doesn't play as fast as he used to, and he never was that fast of a player. I think Tocchet will be much more understanding of a slower center. I don't think it's going to be as much of a deal breaker as it was with Torts. And you saw at the end of the year, Couturier was scoring. He was playing real well with Michov. I could see Couturier. Look, I don't think Sean Couturier is going to go back to being Selke level Sean Couturier. But I could see him going back to being 50, 60 point Sean Couturier under a coach that just, for whatever reason, seemed to have it out for him like Torts did.
All right, moving on to the draft. Was in a couple weeks, I guess. I don't know.
Days.
Yeah, I don't follow puck. That's why we have you on. The Flyers do have those 3 picks. It's interesting because next year's draft, the 2026, is looked at as like an incredible draft. And you saw yesterday the Rangers sent the number 12 overall pick to Pittsburgh because they're like, well, we're expecting to be good next year, but we think that the 20-something overall pick will actually be better than the 12th this year. And the Flyers have 3 first-round picks. Do you expect them to actually use all 3 first-round picks?
I expect them to use number 6. I absolutely think they're going to use that one because I think they can get a legitimate blue chip prospect at 6. Now, who that prospect is, I guess we'll find out. But I think they can get one of those guys. There's enough depth at the top. They can get a really good player. As for number 22 and number 31, the picks they got in the Sean Walker trade with Colorado, and then originally this was the Florida pick they got in the Giroux trade. Then they turned it into Edmonton's pick because they traded out of last year's late first round to this year's late first round. I could see them maybe. I'm not necessarily expecting them to trade one of those picks away for a player, but I could potentially see them maybe packaging those picks to move up and maybe get a pick in like the early teens. I think they want to be aggressive at this draft. And while I don't think it's likely they're going to be able to move up from 6 because you rarely see top 5, even top 10 picks traded in the NHL. It's more of a thing in other drafts. Hockey, basically, if you have a top 10 pick, you're keeping it unless you're trading for a Corey Schneider or an Alex DeBrincat. I could see, however, the Flyers trying to jump up from 22, maybe into the early teens if a guy slips, if there's somebody they really like, and maybe they use 31 to do that. Maybe they trade back from 31 if they think they can get their guy, at 37, 38. They get another early second. So I'm expecting movement from the Flyers, but I'm not necessarily expecting them to trade one of those first-round picks for a player. If I had to guess, I would guess they make 2 first-round picks in this draft, though.
Okay. You've been doing really good work with PHLY, breaking down some of the prospects that might be available at pick 6. I'm assuming that you kind of know who your top 3 choices would be. So who do you think the Flyers pick will be at 6?
I'm about to probably might by the time this comes out, it might already be out. I'm going to be releasing my my every pick mock for the Flyers, which is basically every single pick. And once you get to rounds 6, 5, I'm just spitballing. I don't know, but the early rounds, you're kind of going with because who the heck knows who Will Zellers is or whatever. You might as well
just
be
making up names.
Exactly. But the early picks, obviously, they're ones where you're reading into what might be. I think I'm going to guess Jake O'Brien just because of the combination of, number one, they're familiar with him.
Didn't they take that kid?
What's that?
Didn't the Flyers already take that kid?
Jay O'Brien, not Jake O'Brien.
My mistake.
So close.
My mistake. I thought he was
close.
a redraft. Okay, continue with Jake, his brother.
No, Jake O'Brien, they are not related. Jay O'Brien was American. Jake O'Brien is Canadian. Number one, there's a connection because Jay McKee was Danny Briere's teammate. He was Jake O'Brien's head coach in the OHL. So they got a connection. They got inside info there. He's a center. I think the Flyers do want to get a center. He's a high hockey IQ, really good playmaker type center. The Flyers tend to value that. And I also think it's likely he'll be there. I think it's a possibility that they could go for. I know from what I've heard, I know they really like Caleb Desnoyers. I think if he's there, I think he's the pick, but I don't think he's going to be there. I think if Anton Frondell was there, he'd probably be the pick, but I don't think he's going to be there. So you're basically, in my mind, left with three guys. You're left with most likely options are Jake O'Brien, James Higgins, and Brady Martin. James Higgins would probably be my pick, but I just get the sense that he might not be their guy. He's a little on the small side. They did just trade for Trevor Zegras. Zegras' style is somewhat similar to Higgins's. They may think it might be a little redundant. O'Brien's 6'2". The idea is he's going to grow more into his body. So I think that might give O'Brien the slight edge. And as for Brady Martin, there's rumors that he could be the guy. He's more of like a Sam Bennett type. And maybe the Flyers, after trading for Trevor Zegras, are like, yeah, we need that physical punch. We need that ability to have a guy who can come through in the playoffs, who can be our gritty, physical, hard-nosed top six forward in the Sam Bennett mold. I'm just skeptical because they tend to value hockey IQ so much. The Brent Flair run scouting department, it's like their number one trait. And that's the one thing that Brady Martin is questioned about is, is he going to stick down the middle? Is he more of a winger because he kind of floats around and doesn't think the game at a super high level? Is it possible they go Brady Martin? Yeah, because I'm sure they love to compete. I'm sure they're going to love the physicality. He has a really good shot. He's a good prospect. But it just doesn't quite line up for me with what they usually value in prospects. And I think Jake O'Brien lines up with what they value in prospects, especially at the top of the draft, more than Martin does. I would go with Higgins, but I'm going to guess O'Brien. Also, Higgins might not even be there. Higgins might get taken 4. He may get taken 5 with Nashville. If I were Nashville, I'd take him in a heartbeat. So we'll see. But I think O'Brien is the most likely for me in terms of fit, in terms of what the Flyers like, and in terms of likelihood to still be there at 6.
All right. After the draft, you have free agency. I know sports, and we're either going to put it to bed, or we're going to, I guess, light some kindling on fire with this, because I think a lot of like casual hockey fans will go, well, the Flyers should sign that Bennett guy, or the Flyers should sign that Marner guy. Do you think they will be big game hunting in this free agent class, or will they wait till next year?
I think they're going to wait till next year. And they've been open about that. Now, they could be lying. It could be a smokescreen. They could go out there and throw $70 million plus contract at Mitch Marner. It could happen. I think Sam Bennett's staying in Florida. It seems like that's where all the signs are pointing to. He doesn't want to leave there. He wants to just be a god down there and win more cups, which fair. I get it.
I hate him.
Everybody does.
And
then if he was on your team, you'd love him. He's one of those guys.
Don't tell me what I do. All right. You don't know me.
Okay. So coming from the guy who likes Sean Avery.
Sean Avery had it. Yeah, you're okay. Fair enough. All right. Sometimes you just got to take the L on that one. All right.
There we go. But point being, the Flyers have been pretty open that next summer is going to be the summer where they really go out in free agency. Now, trades, I fully expect them to make trades this summer. They've already made one. They might make more. I don't think Marner, Bennett, those types of guys, Nick Ehlers, I don't think those guys are realistic options. I do think they're going to be active in free agency in the sense of looking for guys. And the big position I think they're going to address, or try to address at least in free agency or trade, is goalie. They like Sam Ersson. They realize now that he can't be the number one, at least not at this stage of his career. They had the worst goaltending by the numbers in hockey this past year. If they want to be competitive, they don't need great goalies. They just need competent ones. And I think they're going to go out this summer and they're going to sign a guy, or they're going to trade for a guy that they can pair with Ersson to at least give them competence in goal. Jake Allen's been a guy who's been mentioned. And again, he's not great. He's nothing amazing, but he's at least a guy you can count on for a .900 save percentage. And based on what the Flyers watched last year and what their fans watched last year, .900 save percentage would be amazing. That would be like an oasis in the desert.
But isn't this what they do every year? Like honestly, it seems like every year that story, what you just laid out. The Flyers have like the worst goaltender tandem ever, and they like the one guy. He's good in the room, and he brings donuts every once in a while, but he sucks at hockey. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go get Brian Elliott, and we're gonna convince ourselves that Brian Elliott could be the guy. Like, at what point does it stop? At what point do you actually go out there and you take one of your picks and you do go get whoever? I don't have a name. Like last year, like Askarov was on, the trade market. The Flyers have 3 first-round picks. That could have been your future goalie. You don't take it. It just seems like anytime there's a goaltender out there that is legitimately a good goalie, not he can get by. The Flyers don't do that move, but they'll go out there and they'll get a Jeff Hackett.
Jeff can't hack it with his vertigo,
With
but
vertigo,
he had
exactly.
vertigo,
He
indeed.
did.
It's a fair point, Pat. It really is. What I will tell you is the reason why in this case they're not going out and trying to make a big move for a goalie is because they believe they have at least two really good goalies in their pipeline that they kind of just want to have a bridge to. They took two goalies in 2023, the same draft where they took Matvei Mishkov. They took Carson Bjarnason in the second round out of Brandon in the WHL, and then they took Igor Zavragin out of Russia. Now, they like Bjarnason. He's going to turn pro this year. Got some time at the end of the year with the Phantoms after his junior season ended. They like him. He's a big goalie, raw, got a lot of talent. They think they can mold him into something good. They really, really like Igor Zavragin. He's 19 years old. He's already a starting goalie in the KHL. They think that when his contract is up in a couple years in the KHL and he comes over, that he could be their answer. So I think that's why they're not necessarily itching to give up major assets or sign a goalie to a 6-7 year contract to solve the problem, because they think they have the solution coming. Now, look, they could be wrong. There was a long period of time where everybody thought Carter Hart was the answer. And I mean, obviously he's not the answer. So they could be wrong, but that's where they're coming from. And that they think, if we can get a Jake Allen for a year or two just to get us to our young guys, then we'll be fine. We'll see if that proves to be the right strategy, but that's what they're thinking.
All right. What's the next concert you got on the docket?
Ooh, I don't have a concert for a while. I had a bunch of them over the last few weeks, but
you didn't tag the artist on Instagram. I had no idea who you were seeing. We've discussed this off air.
Well, you know why I didn't tag the artist on Instagram, Pat? Because the artist's name was right behind the band.
Debatable. That's so debatable. And you know what? It's poppycock is what it is.
Because
I had no idea who you were watching. And I looked.
Okay.
Be better.
Okay.
When's your next concert, though?
I honestly don't remember.
You don't remember?
No, I don't think I have one for another month or two.
You're slacking, dude. You're slacking. For people that don't know, Charlie in the summertime just goes to concerts every week and will pop in to Citizens Bank Park. How many Mets fans were in attendance because you went, Sunday's game?
Friday. Yeah,
the good game. How many Mets fans were in attendance? How annoying were they?
I would say far too many for my liking, but fewer than I expected. It was a very, very prominent Phillies crowd, which I was very happy about, and we got to see a great game. That was the game where you had two guys slide into home plate within the half a second of each other. Fun game.
Yeah, that was cool. Okay, you can follow his stuff on PHLY. You can. I mean, I write there too, but his stuff's better. If you like hockey, you still have yet to come out to one of my games. I got one at 10:15. I'll leave you tickets, but it's fine.
Thanks, dude. I'll be like, you'll be leaving the tickets, and I'll be like Ricky Bobby's dad.
I was just gonna say, it's like Ricky Bobby's dad,
and then immediately scalps them.
I'm out there just like, these are from my dad. These are from my friend Charlie. He's never showing up. All right, man. I appreciate it. Follow me. What's your Twitter account? Because I feel like it changed.
CharlieO_Con.
It never changed. Okay.
Nope.
All right. I'll talk to you whenever.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Pat.